At this moment, I imagine multiple congregations reflecting on Palm Sunday with me. I can't see you, but I can try to feel you. The first are my contemporaries, which is why I'm wearing this mask. I want to acknowledge that we have lived like this for what feels like a long time. This mark of our limitations has been our reality, a reality that has sickness and persistent danger for the most vulnerable, and sometimes violently obstinate denial from others, born out of the terrible virus of individualism. So I speak with you as a mother, caretaker for an elderly parent, teacher, and especially a practitioner of the ministry of theological inquiry and prophetic action. To my contemporaries, especially those responsible for the well-being of others, I want to say you're not alone in feeling beaten down and close to shutting down your beating heart because it hurts to care. I feel this. Yet if you're still listening, you're an example of the kind of hope that human beings can generate when what first appears as an impenetrable darkness engulfs us. In your grief, I am grateful you're here, and we're accompanying each other. The second congregation I imagine are those of you watching this sometime in the future. We have left you our ghosts, images preserved as bits of data. You may have stumbled upon this reflection a year from now, 10 more. That I believe you're there somewhere in the future that continues to unfold is my sign of stubborn hope. You see, as pandemics, war, and climate change peel off the mask from the world we thought we knew to reveal the wounded reality underneath, many of us are doubting that humanity has any kind of future. So how do we grab on to stubborn hope right now so you will be there in the future? One way is to look at our scriptures and liturgical year as an intentional training ground for how to meet reality on its terms, transcend it, and then transform it. So how do we meet it on its terms? Well, Palm Sunday's ritual reenactment of events through communal prayer leading into Holy Week provides some answers. Once a year, we're brought into Lent's relentless reminder of fragility and our dependence on God and each other. According to the scriptures, Jesus intentionally walks away from all he knows. He begins a process of shedding the comforts that could dull his senses from seeing deeply into God's heart, or worse, tempt him to look away from the pain crying out to God, co-opted by the promise of power. Only against the starkness of this meeting of reality does Jesus' insistence to endanger his life by going to Jerusalem for Passover make any sense. The reality of his community is there in lives crushed by conspiring powers. He cannot walk away from the offenses against God's desire of radical love. So he must transcend the paralysis that could overtake him and his friends in the face of Rome's brutality and the collusion of the powerful who rely on Rome to prop them up. The extreme contradiction of his situation is captured in his entry into Jerusalem, where we note the symbolic power of the Mount of Olives. This hill of olive trees beyond the city walls from which Jerusalem comes into view is both the site of the promise of God's reign as he arrives and the site of its most destructive betrayal as he's arrested. The reality is that it is both at once. And this is where Jesus transcends the fear that could stop him. A moment that clarifies for him that violence can no longer be viewed as the answer to conflicts. And so we're called out of ourselves to take this road with Jesus, to take up the gift of the reign of God we're called to bring, while knowing that there will be murderous opposition to that gift. As we step out of our comfort into the starkness of what is real, we transcend fear to see clearly that we must continue on to Jerusalem, because that is where change happens. This Holy Week, we sit with Jesus in the underground cistern where he was likely kept overnight as he waited trial. And we try to fathom how it is that he continued to love and to work for love in spite of so much evidence that he should just give up. Humanity must have broken his heart. They were hopeless, mired in their own self-preservation, and yet there were those women, his mother, the Magdalene, the others, fearless. They pushed on, wanting him to see them, to know their nearness. Like in so many of the stories of his Jewish community, they enacted God's reign. The few who made visible God's love, showing that humanity was not without hope. Jesus is the last person in history who will die with the question of God's abandonment. Where was God? In his flesh, because he stared down reality and transcended it through stubborn hope for what we could be. He forever transformed history. The God of love and of life was indeed present, real, and alive in history, taking Jesus up into God's arms, raising him for all to see. This, humans, this unstoppable belief in your potential is the key to transformation. Jesus is leading the way. Now follow him.